Hey. So I'm recording this with your permission. I want to put it up on the web so that people
Yeah,
can begin to understand what goes wrong.
yeah.
Right. So what I'd like to do is to start with what's it like to be anorexic? What was it like then? What was going on in your mind?
Hmm. It's a pretty harrowing experience from the inside. It feels like being tortured by yourself.
Ah,
Um, it's like an inescapable bully. Um, it's kind of, I mean, it's a long time back now, so it is, I don't feel disconnected from it, but it was so intense, and I'm living such a different life now. Um, but I suppose, as it um, took a hold of me, it was really all that I could think about was this kind of excruciating agony of negotiating what to eat, what not to eat. That was like the real focus of every minute of my day. Whether I was at school or at home, from the moment I woke up till the minute I went to bed, doing lots and lots of checks on myself, like how much had I eaten, how many calories had I eaten. It was relentless, relentless obsession, and just a real inability to kind of see anything beyond that. So I didn't, I mean, even still to this day, like, I don't know, 20 plus years more down the line, I'm still finding out how that experience was for my family, because at the time I had no idea how difficult it was for them because I was so immersed in it myself. For me, it was everything. There was nothing else to my day apart from how much water I had drank or how much weight I had lost, or how I could reach the next milestone. Um, yeah, just a kind of all consuming obsession.
so how
Very, very, very difficult to um like calm down. Living in a constant state of alarm, really. Being constantly vigilant.
and how old were you when it started?
I was 13.
Did it start suddenly?
Um, you could say it started suddenly, like, from the outside, it seemed like it started quite suddenly, but I think on the interior, I was pretty unhappy from the time I was about 11 or 12. And, um, you know, seemingly very high achieving, very sort of capable young person, um, going through a bit of bullying, going through parental difficulties at home, and all that was bubbling away. And it wasn't until, yeah, a certain trigger, going away on holiday, I had put on a bit of weight, sort of pre-pubescent or pubescent sort of chubbiness, which is normal for girls at 12 and 13. But I felt very frightened about that. And that was the suddenness of my diet change, where I cut back on a lot of foods, and that kind of spiraled pretty quickly into like a very worrying health status.
Did you have any idea at the time where it had come from?
No, absolutely none.
Uh,
No, I thought I was dieting to look nice, and I thought it was pretty a normal, non-pathological kind of idea. I read a lot of, you know, like teen mags, and my friends dieted, and my mum didn't eat breakfast, and it was a really kind of, yeah, I had absolutely no idea how um strong the desire was, or how trapped I was by my own self.
so where was it coming from when you realized? How did you realize? And
um well, I was hospitalized pretty soon after I began dieting. I was very dehydrated, and I had some things like issues with my heart and dizziness and things like that, I then sort of took it seriously, but I was also in a haze because I was still absolutely determined to continue it, despite other people saying that it was dangerous. Um, it wasn't until I met you that I thought there was anything deeper than just a sort of childhood whim. Um, I, and the contrast between your approach and what you spoke about, which was all very like transparent, direct, to the point, let's get down to what this is. It's the gravity of the problem, you know, that really was in stark contrast to the therapy that I received, in the years following, which was, you're a very angry person, there's something wrong with you, let's like drum it out, or let's use some art therapy to express that. And it was very directionless. It acknowledged the emotions, which obviously in a very severely anorexic person, it's obvious that there's something huge in the emotional life, but it did feel very directionless. Um,
So what was the direction that I gave it?
um, well, I think from our first meeting, and I really remember crying and breaking down. It was about fear and terror around childhood, and a fear of expressing um, my own sort of sovereignty and my beliefs and my separation or my independence from my parents.
Wow.
Um, I didn't know it then, but I did have a big sort of chasm between me and my dad. That was the first kind of relationship that came up when we were speaking. Um, and I think because your approach was so direct and it opened up like a very long inquiry for me throughout all of my teenage years. I was very privileged to have you in my life at that point because I think it really could have gone on so much longer if I hadn't had those seeds that you planted. Yeah, I was party to a lot of information that you gave me that I don't think many of the other girls were when I was an inpatient. And so I did slowly work through and do a lot of journaling and work through what it was between me and my dad, and later on between me and my mum, because I sort of thought that I'd got on top of it, and then I kind of relapsed, and there was more work to do. I came back to see you, I think.
I hope so. Very happy.
Yeah.
So basically, I suggested something which hadn't occurred to you. Is that what happened?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I thought that I was dieting to look nice for boys.
Right.
Um, it didn't strike me that it was untoward, but it was so all consuming that it had to be something else. And I did begin to see that. I couldn't let it go. So I knew that there was something deeper going on because it felt like an addiction, or it felt like an inescapable command.
But it didn't occur to you as an addiction until I prompted something or other. What did I
No.
prompt?
Um, hmm. You prompted an inquiry into my closest relationships. What was there, and it um these most close and important relationships to me that I hadn't really examined. I mean, I was a child as well, so it's not usual to examine these things until later on in your life. Like I I didn't know that as my dad stepped away from me as a teenager, that hurt me, that I felt estranged from him, and that I wasn't able to get angry at him for that because he was a very angry, fairly violent man in my childhood. And so I was afraid to be humiliated or hurt by him if I then said, actually, Dad, why have you stepped away just as I enter you know, puberty, what is it that's threatening about me? Why is there now something wrong with me? And I guess anorexia really served that purpose of keeping me small, keeping me childlike, keeping me kind of
Wow,
sick.
wow. Small, eh?
Yeah.
And stop puberty, stop having to move on, basically, and stop. Somehow you sense that your father couldn't tolerate a changed person from a baby infant into a girl, basically.
Yes.
You couldn't tolerate that.
Yeah. It was that, and it was, I think, for him mystifying to how to parent a teenager. I think it's a whole different ball game now being a parent to teenagers of my own. I think it's a challenge, yeah.
What I remember is the chasm, basically. I
Mm,
mean, the story I have in my head at the time was that your dad was taking your brothers to football, but not you,
mm, mm.
something like that. Now, when you burst into tears, can you remember why?
Um, I'm trying to think back, and I traveled up to York on the train by myself at 14, and I'd come into your office, and it was so, yeah, it was momentous for me, the whole thing. Um, it was around like, I think what I found really useful in those early days was you saying, like, put your dad in the chair and say to him, um, it's your loss. If you don't engage with me, if you're not interested, which was what I was afraid of, that he was, stepping away from me because for some reason unknown to me, um, and flipping it on its head and saying it's not necessarily, I mean, of course I feel sad and I feel the loss, but it is his loss. And to feel empowered by that was really stunning.
Wow.
Um, because then I felt like I'm in the driving seat of my own destiny rather than being this kind of like little kid that has no say and is just at the mercy of your parents' arguments and decisions.
And how much anger was driving the anorexia?
Um, it's a funny kind of anger because it was like it's not like so passive aggressive. I'm gonna like really mess myself up. I'm gonna really damage myself so you guys come and rescue me.
Oh, I mean,
You watch to see how ill I'm gonna get. You're gonna have to pick me up off the floor.
when you unfortunately you were such a determined person.
I know. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful, wonderful. So let me see. That was, I think it was about 2000, wasn't it? Something like that. So you were
Yeah.
14. How old are you now? 30,
I'm 38.
38. And you've got what, five children? Four
I've
children?
got five daughters.
Five daughters. Wonderful for you.
And my oldest is 14, and it's just so interesting to see how differently we're navigating the teenage years and how different her relationship is with her body. I'm doing a good job. I mean, in part thanks to you.
I mean, I'm just delighted. What's the difference? How are you navigating differently?
I'm not stepping away. Her dad's not stepping away. Um, we have absolutely no, when I was growing up, there was a lot of interference in that, in raising awareness around somebody else's body. Like my mum would speak about, me going through my periods or me developing like it was a family affair, like it was something to be spoken about. And I really found that unacceptable. And so we don't speak about each other's bodies like that. We don't, we respect privacy. We promote consent. Um, we we focus on health rather than anything as ephemeral as beauty or fleeting changes in the body. It's all kind of irrelevant. Like we're really, I home educated my kids for a long time to kind of ground them in like who they are as people, what they want to do with their lives. And that's off the back of having a fairly damaged relationship with my parents, although on the surface, a seemingly good one.
So just double check. You were the eldest, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you had two brothers or one brother?
Two brothers and a half sister.
Okay, fantastic. And what's your relationship with your parents today?
Good, but it's funny, the legacy of going through something like that um, enables you to do a lot of work fairly early on in healing family relations, because it's all out on the table, because there's so much that's wrong. So we went through a lot together, and our relationship is very, very open and honest. I'm you know I'm still having to make the decisions again and again. I don't need them to approve what I do. It's still with me and it still serves me. Um, Even as an adult and a parent with 5 kids, those lessons from when I was 14 are still very relevant, and they're at the core of what I do and what I teach to other people.
So what do you teach other people?
I work in herbal medicine, so I work with a lot of families. I teach kids herbal medicine, which is basically using natural medicines to keep us well. Um, but I do a lot of work with family relationships and um, trying to open up conversations around patterns that are being repeated, that we want to leave behind. I'm just coming at it from a different angle, but it's very much in the same vein.
How would you summarize it? What's your approach?
Um, hmm. Well, I think good family relations have the power to change the world. I think that if you have intact family relations where you respect each other and you empower each other and you're honest and the relationship is clear, I think that has such potent power to change our communities and to improve our healthcare systems. Like, so much is wasted in kind of very tangled explorations, seemingly therapeutic but not very direct. um, so I feel like my role is to help people improve their well-being and their vitality and their energy, at the same time examining like what goes on at birth, what goes on in the early years, and how plants serve mothers to undo some of the things that they've been taught through parenting.
So, if you were a director of anorexia services, what would you say? What would your principles be?
Yeah, funny. I recently contacted the consultant who was in charge of my care when I was 14. I haven't got a response yet. um, and I think that in contrast to what I was told was that there was something wrong with me that needed to be medicated out of me. That was one line of thought, was that something needed to be got out or shut down or erased or put to bed, and that there was little help, little hope for people to actually get rid of this in the long term, that it was something that would follow me around forever.
Wow.
Um, yeah, pretty damning diagnosis, really.
Pessimistic too.
Very pessimistic, um, but I think that's because well, it's the rates of relapse are so high. Um, People do carry this around for a long time, and I think it's because they don't have the tools, um, and because they waste a lot of time searching for meaning and reasons within the diagnosis. And I think, yeah, what would I do if I was the director? um, I mean, I loved your approach, and my dad did later take it up of trust that these people don't want to die, and trust that um, that there is a meaning, and that the anorexia is serving them for a certain purpose, which seems to be to them to be life saving, but which is keeping them, in an infant state. And so um, I would always look to the family relationships and um, how to offer them healing, how to offer them a line of communication, even if they don't want an actual physical, relationship.
You talk to them straight. You talk to them straight about mum and dad and so on.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what
Yeah.
tools would you bring with you into the directorship?
What do you mean?
As you say, you're now the director of the anorexia service, and you've got some tools which you need to
Mm.
get the staff to follow. What would you say? How would you summarize it?
Like your motto, like truth, trust, and consent, like that, do you mean?
That's lovely, yeah. And also the idea that there's some medication. Did they tried medication on you, different medications?
They did. I was on an antidepressant for a while. I was on, I think, like a schizophrenia drug for a while, an antipsychotic. Um, I didn't get along with the pharmaceuticals terribly well, I have to say. I took them very short term. I didn't really understand why I was taking them. Um, and I haven't taken them since. It was very, very fleeting for me. I suppose that I understand why pharmaceuticals and medications are brought in very dire situations that are very frightening, because anorexia takes hold and people do die and people do lose their lives, and sometimes people seem unreachable. And so I understand the context for medicating people. I respect that. Um, but I think, I offer a picture of hope, and I I I don't know. It's difficult to summarize.
That's very good. I like it very much. So, what led you to contact the consultant or try and contact him?
uh, coming full circle, digging up my past and being like really open to having the conversation again, because I want to bring something of my journey and offer it to people who are still suffering. I I don't think that the system has changed enough. I don't think that um, people necessarily understand it any better than they used to. And so I was kind of opening up a conversation around what could I bring, what could I, you know, what story could I tell, what can I offer to give back to the system that did care for me. Um, so I was kind of delving into my past, because I have no demons and I have no fear around it, and there's nothing there which I'm not willing to explore. I'm very confident in my recovery. I'm very confident I will never ever go back there. I have no temptation there. So I feel like I've come so far that it's not, it used to be a frightening place if I considered going back and, being amongst people who were eating disorder. That did take me some time to kind of work through and work beyond. Um, but since becoming a mother, and in particular to 5 girls, I feel like part of my mission in the world is to, is to work with young women or girls, and do some supportive work around, family parental relationships.
Absolutely right. Do you remember what it was like when you had that consultation with the consultant, as you say? And as I recall, your father was in the room and he made some really unpleasant remarks. Do you remember what they were?
Um, One of the consultants toward my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that conventional psychiatry didn't really serve the family very well. I think my dad had a lot of reservations, and was demonized because he didn't toe the line. He was told to force feed me. He was told not to trust me at all. He was told that there was something like demonic inside me that could not be controlled unless everything was out of my hands. No decisions were mine anymore. I had no autonomy. I was 14, and I was to be put basically back in the high chair. And my dad was not going to do that. My dad was the one eventually that I felt safest to eat with because he trusted me. And I think following guidance from you, he trusted me that I wanted deep down to get better, that I wanted to be in control of my own life, nothing to do with food, but that I wanted to, that I needed to work this out a different way, and putting more and more vigilance, hypervigilance on me and what I was eating was my mum's approach, and it's still present today in her approach to me and in her line of questions to me. Have you been eating enough? Have you looked after yourself? Blah blah blah.
But that's that you're now immune to that. You're now water.
Yes, absolutely.
That's interesting because the recollection I have is that your dad said to the consultant, "I'm thinking of taking you to see Bob Johnson," and
Ah,
he's allegedly said, "A very dangerous man." I don't know if
yes.
I don't
That was a
remember that.
yeah. So that was when I was at Whipps Cross, and it was a I don't know if it was a consultant. It was somebody who came to see me who threatened to section me because he perceived the non-conforming of what he thought was best for the family, which was to keep me in. Um, and I was in just a pediatric unit. I wasn't in a special eating disorders unit at that point, or under any kind of close watch. I was just in a kids ward, um, and so it was a dire situation, really.
But you left the hospital, so they couldn't section you, as I recall.
Yes, yes.
Thought they came up. I think you came up first with your mother, if I recall correctly. Yeah,
Mm,
and then you came
mm.
on your own, which was very commendable.
Yes. Oh, I love those journeys. It was like, again, it was another kind of notch in my independence. And those journeys I would spend on the way back, I would have my post-it notes and I would be writing notes. It's okay if I'm 50 kilos, what happens if you're 50 kilos? And these things that I found so frightening, and you would be saying to me, what's actually going to happen? And I'm like, nothing. I was absolutely terrified, and I think each session that we did was was very profound, and it lasted. The work that you kind of, the ideas and the thoughts and the strength of what you believed, which was totally positive, was the contrast to how I'd been treated and was subsequently treated by the system. Um, I don't think I ever experienced anything as positive as your treatment and what you offered ever again.
So basically, what I was saying was, have a look at the fear, and it's not as big as you think.
Yes, you somehow created this like safe space where even though I didn't know you hardly, you had a very like your manner and the way that you um, really kind of trusted a positive outcome was very infectious, like an infectious positivity and optimism. And I admire it very much. And I think, that's it's so powerful to be gifted that and to be in the company of somebody who really believes in you. and who doesn't demonize you, and who says this is just smokescreen. This isn't really what's going on. I'm not interested in your weight. I'm not interested in your like the doctors, obviously the psychiatrists will be monitoring my weight. How much has she lost? How much has she gained? And all of that. And that would be the focus of our clinical meetings. And with you, it was so different. It was, you knew what this was really about. You were willing to explore it with me. You were willing to stay there in conversation as I kind of awakened up to actually what I'm running from, isn't calories.
It was chasm, not
Yeah.
calories. Yeah, that's wonderful. Anyway, I'm so grateful to hear all this. It sounds wonderful. We're running out of time. Got another 8 minutes or so, so we must watch for that. But that's wonderful. So basically, it was control that I was giving you back control, or saying why haven't you got control? I mean, basically,
Mm.
it was your self-control, and from what you said when you started, you were in this the control of the disease, as it were. It was hypervigilance, and it was total there. And I said, look at the fear. What's going to happen?
Mm.
How when you stopped coming to see me, well, probably half a dozen times or something of that sort, and then you went in and out of hospital after that, and
Yeah, I had a long inpatient journey, which is the kind of the art therapy, the CBT. It wasn't a completely negative experience at all, but it did not progress me in understanding what the hell was going on in my mind and why I was so driven to annihilate myself. Um, it didn't, it didn't support me in exploring that. It did ensure that I survived, so I came out alive at barely 5 stone, probably the same weight I went in at. So there wasn't much progress on any front really, and I continued to be a day patient, and I eventually went back to school. So I missed a year of school, went back to do my GCSEs, and um, I think through the work that we did, the anorexic compulsion loosened its grip. I was able to um, allow other things back into my life, friendships, schoolwork, family relationships. And in the background, I very much worked on what was frightening me, what was dangerous, I felt much safer to explore those things having had the therapy with you.
fantastic. So when was the last time you had any anorexic treatment?
Oh gosh. I probably finished around 17, 18. I did go back in as my parents were breaking up. I went back into psychiatric treatment for self-harm. That I was in a pretty bad situation then at 18. And I had a psychotic episode when I was probably 19, 20. But apart from that, that was it. Yeah.
I'm so grateful to you. Thank you very much. Um,
You're very welcome.
Let me just double check. You don't mind if I put this up on the web and everybody can have a look at it? Because
No, no.
anorexia is a lethal disease generally, as you say, and it does need a new new angle.
Mm,
And what you're saying is music to my heart, obviously, saying that you're taking control and you're growing up and taking responsibility and everything, which you were denied.
mm. I know so many. I've got lots of, other mums and women that I know that had eating disorders in their youth and still carry the legacy of being untreated, whilst they seem on the outside to be okay, an okay weight. They're still struggling with all of that internal sort of bullying from themselves, that internal voice.
How would you rate the phrase unprocessed rage
Yes, yeah, yeah, 100%.
against your parents?
Yeah, yeah,
Anyway, I hope we meet again. It'd be lovely to do that. And
yeah. Thanks for having me and spending time.
Not at all. I'm so pleased. And seems to be a lot more interest in this approach, but it's up against a very difficult
Mm.
establishment. They medicate before they start thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll call on you again, and we'll go and see the Minister of Health or something.
Okay, fabulous.
Thank you very much indeed.
Take care, Bob.
And you too. Take care. Thanks for everything. That's lovely.